Good evening, everybody. We'll make a start if you don't mind. Welcome to the September Cabinet meeting. Fire alarm procedures. If the fire alarm is activated, vacate the offices via the stairs. Please do not use the lifts. Assemble in Hawley Square on the green. Officers will assist you and advise when it's deemed safe to return to the chamber. Please switch off or turn to silent your mobile phones. Do not make or receive calls while the meeting is in progress. Please note this meeting is being live streamed for members of the public. The meeting will also be recorded and will be available subsequently on the internet. Does anyone intend to film the meeting? No. Following members have asked to speak under Council Procedure Rule 20.1. Item 4, Councillors Rogers and Rattigan. Item 6, Councillor Matterface and Cupp. Item 7, Councillor J. Bright, Garner, Bayford, Pugh, Towning and Davis. Item 9, Councillor Towning. Do any other members wish to speak under 20.1? Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader. 6, 7 and 11, please.
Thank you. We have no apologies because Cabinet is all here. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have an interest to declare in items of business on the agenda this evening? Thank you, Councillor Bright.
Item 7, I'm a member of Broadstairs Town Council.
Thank you. Can I clarify for the benefit of members speaking under 20.1 that you do need to declare an interest if you have one? So I will either take those declarations now or I'll take them at the start of the item if you're not clear. But you do need to declare an interest if you have one. We've clarified this with the monitoring officer.
I'm quite happy to declare an interest. I'm similarly a member of the Town Council. Yes.
Yeah, you don't need to declare an interest as a district councillor because that's why you're here. So, thank you. Any more? Any more? Councillor Joe Bright.
Yeah, I'd like to declare an interest as well in item 7. I'm a town councillor. Thank you.
I'm assuming that Broadstairs town councillors don't wish to speak about Broadstairs War Memorial because I think that's potentially.
Yes, it's the same item.
I know it's the same item, but there are other issues on that under that agenda item.
I'm going to mention it in my
I've given Mr. Hughes.
If you're going to mention the War Memorial, I think you'd have an interest so significant that you wouldn't be able to partake in that element of it. If you avoid talking about the War Memorial, then I think it's okay to stay for the rest of the item about the other elements of that report, if that makes sense.
I think just for clarity, I mean, clearly Broadstairs,
because I don't quite understand.
Well, the item is about the council transferring an asset to Broadstairs Town Council. So if you're a Broadstairs Town Councillor, you clearly have an interest in that. And I think people, if it was any other kind of organisation, people would say, well, hold on, this bloke's coming along, he works for Firm X, and Firm X is benefiting from this item. So I don't think there's anything sinister about it, Councillor Gardner. I just think it's clarity. No. It's just clarity, and make sure we do things properly and that people declare interest when they should. That's
okay.
All.
Then I will commit not to mention it.
Thank you. Okay. So the first substantive item is item 4, which is the annual Treasury Management Review 2024. I'm sorry. Charles has reminded me we need to do the minutes, so I'm getting ahead of myself. I apologise. So we need to approve the summary of recommendations and decisions of the Cabinet meeting held on the 28th of August, a copy of which is attached to the agenda pack. I propose we take the minutes as read. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Alban, thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed? Thank you. Now we can move on to item 4, which is the annual Treasury Management Review. The report provides a comprehensive summary of our Treasury management activity and prudential and Treasury indicators for the past financial year. It details how the Council has managed its borrowing, investments and cash flows. Key highlights within the report include an overview of our capital expenditure on long-term assets, which was £41.7 million. Our gross debt position at 31st March 2025 was £37.1 million, well within the statutory authorised limit of £154.5 million, and the Council's investment balance stood at £35.4 million at the year end. The report also outlines our compliance with regulatory requirements, including the SIPFA Code of Practice on Treasury Management and the SIPFA Prudential Code for Capital Finance in Local Authorities. It confirms that all Treasury Management reports have undergone proper scrutiny by the Governance and Audit Committee. So the recommendations before Cabinet today are to note the 2024-25 Prudential and Treasury indicators in this report, make comments as appropriate and to recommend this report to Council for approval. I move the recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Keane. And speaking under 20.1, Councillor Rogers.
Thank you, Leader. Just a brief question, actually. In 2.3 and 4.5, it states that the Council has not published its final statement of account for 2023/24 and 2024/25. Why has the statement of account for 2023/24 not been published yet, as we're now in 2025? Thank you.
I think there's a general problem with publication of accounts, but I shall refer that to Mr Blundell, who will give you a much more complete answer.
Thank you, Leader. The draft accounts have been published. However, the final accounts have not been published because they're still subject to audit. In relation to 23-24, there is an objection to the accounts that the auditors are currently considering. I'm hopeful that it will be concluded by the end of the financial year. In relation to 24-25, the auditors are due to start their audits in October in earnest. They've done some preliminary work, but their actual field work will begin in October, and the final accounts should be presented for approval for governance and audit in the early part of 2026.
Thank you. Councillor Rattigan.
Thank you, Chair. With the CFR standing at 75.1 million, how does the Council intend to balance the need for future borrowing against potential risk it poses on budgetary flexibility and financial sustainability? Are there alternative financial strategies being considered to reduce reliance on debt for capital projects?
Thank you, Councillor Rattigan. I'm going to pass that over to Mr Blundell.
Thank you, Leader. So the capital finance requirement sets out our need to borrow, which, as you can see in the report, has increased is forecast to increase in the future. A lot of the borrowing that we're undertaking is actually to underpin housing schemes, and that borrowing, therefore, can be serviced by the income that the rental brings in from tenants in the housing revenue account, or when it's general fund related and relates primarily to temporary accommodation housing, it really is a cost avoidance. So we only look to take borrowing on where it's affordable, and to do so there would be an income stream attached to it, or there is revenue savings in doing so, unless it is related to standard business activity, whether that's property compliance or health and safety related works that needs to be taken as a matter of course of business operations.
And one last quick one. The reduction in the investment balance from 41.7 to 35. Is there reasons why there's sort of been a decline in the investment balance?
Leader, if that's okay for me to take that one. Yeah, so our cash balance has increased in recent years. That was primarily due to some of the grant funding that we received. As we've started to spend some of that grant funding, as the schemes have progressed, that's resulted in our cash balances reducing. We've also used some of our cash balances instead of going out for borrowing, so we've undertaken more internal borrowing to fund some of the acquisition programs. So, for example, some of the housing acquisition programs, we've initially funded that using our initially financed that using our cash balances and only taken on borrowing at the point that it's needed.
Thanks very much.
Members, any comments on the Treasury Management Review? No. Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. We move on to item 5, which is the cremator and mercury abatement service and maintenance contract. Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Leader. Thanet Crematorium has 2 gas-filled cremators which were purchased from and installed by Facultative Technologies Limited. They have continued to maintain and service them since purchase, and both remain in good working order, meeting current emission standards. Market testing has been carried out, but the nature of the technology associated with cremators means that suppliers will only service and maintain cremators which they have supplied. A 10-year cremator and mercury abatement service and maintenance contract would see the cremators serviced and maintained for the rest of their useful life. The cost of this contract would be £835,590 plus VAT if procured through the YPO framework. Therefore, I propose that Cabinet agree the recommendations to 1. Grant permission to use the YPO Public Sector Framework Crematoria Solutions 31032 to procure a service and maintenance contract with Facultative Technologies Limited, and 2. To allow the procurement and award of a contract under the above framework to implement a service and maintenance contract for the cremators and mercury abatement at Thanet Crematorium.
Thank you, Councillor Keane. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Duckworth, thank you. Members, any discussion? No? Far away. Okay. That's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed, members? Agreed. Thank you. We move on to item 6, which is the bus shelter contracts, which I think is Councillor Bright.
Thank you, Leader. Bus shelters are an integral part of bus travel, providing service users with shelter and often somewhere to rest, to stand and to have a natter with their neighbours. Thanet has 90 bus shelters across the district which are installed and maintained as part of a contract in return for revenue from the advertising boards. They're currently coming to their end of their life and require work to make them a health and safety requirement. Where possible, we want people to choose public transport and encourage them to get out of their cars. It's really vital that they have a nice place, a nice facility to wait for the buses. So in preparation for a new service and maintenance contract, a condition survey was carried out, which found 2/3 require replacement in the near future. Kent County Council have announced a grant for bus shelters, and Thanet District Council has applied for approximately £1 million in funding, with the award due to be made imminently. I therefore propose that we agree the following recommendations. That 1, we allow the procurement and award of a contract to provide and install bus shelters within the Thanet district, and 2, to allow the procurement of a bus shelter advertisement, cleaning and maintenance contract upon installation of new bus shelters. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Whitehead. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Cupp.
Thank you, Leader, and incredibly pleased to see this come to Cabinet tonight, and it's encouraging from a question that I asked Councillor Bright, I think it was a couple of full councils ago. I know Councillor Bright said that he didn't have many concerns raised with him then, but I'm pleased that after the question this has come to his attention and been brought forward, so I thank him for that and thank officers for doing the work on this as well. Just a couple of things from me. Firstly, I presume that the £1 million grant that has been applied for will cover the full cost that is needed to undertake this work, and whilst I appreciate it is potentially a little time down the road because of everything that needs to happen, but will there be a firm kind of timeline in place of what when the bus shelters will be replaced and which ones will be replaced first, because hopefully Minis Bay will be on the top of that list. Thank you, Councillor Bright. And just to say again that this is really good news, and I know there's a lot of residents that have been missing the bus shelters, and will be pleased to see this on the agenda. Thank you.
Councillor Bright.
I will hand over to Ms Button, but I'll give you what answers I can first, if that's all right, and you can tell me off for getting them wrong. So you're welcome, firstly, Councillor Cupp, and I believe the process has been ongoing for some time. Will the £1 million cover everything? I'd assume it will make a very good start, but I will pass that one over to Penny when I get to it. And how long will it take? I think this is going to be a process. I would imagine, again, I will get Penny Button to confirm, but I would imagine that those shelters most in need of looking at will be dealt with first. And from my understanding, the shelter at Minnis Bay is one of those that would be very much most in need. From my understanding of it is that it is a pretty miserable place to be waiting in the cold and rain. So, if it's cold and rainy, it's always a beautiful place. But I can imagine if you're waiting for the bus to go to work, it might be quite soggy, should we say? I will pass over to Penny if that's okay.
So yes, the amount applied for does cover everything that we need. So hopefully we will get it all. The order in which they'll be done will depend on the current contractor and how we work with them. But obviously, as you know, Minnis Bay is one of the priority areas, so we're hoping that we'll be able to get that done sooner rather than later.
Councillor Massaface.
Thank you, Leader. As a bus user myself, I welcome this initiative and I hope Cabinet will support it. A lot of what I was going to say, Councillor Cupp's already said. If we want to encourage people to use public transport, we have to make it as comfortable as possible while they're waiting. It's not much fun waiting at St Peter's in pouring rain when the bus shelter leaks. Could I just ask, though, it says replacement bus shelters, do we anticipate adding any extra buses, or is it merely the ones that we've got that are in a bit of a poor state, graffitied and scratched and broken? Oh, can we hope for any more at any point? Thank you.
Councillor Bright.
Again, I will hand over, except to say that in terms of getting them renovated, you know, we maybe haven't spoken about the potential for income. So we do want them to be pleasant places to be. We do want to ensure that we maximise the revenue opportunity. But in terms of new ones, Penny, can you answer that perhaps?
So at this stage, this report is purely about the replacement of the existing ones, but once we've got them up and to a decent standard, then that's something we'll look for funding to do other ones going forward.
Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader. And once again, Councillor Cupp has said some of the things I would have liked to have said, but thank you very much for everybody who's involved in this. It's an excellent development. I wanted to ask a couple of things, which was, are we considering the possibility, as we go along with this, of installing any green roofs on any of the bus shelters, because that is a major contribution to biodiversity. And I know Councillor Pugh in the past has been involved in setting one of those up, so we have some expertise and experience in the chamber. But also, I would strongly suggest that we consider the possibility of working with our town and parish councils to look at things like benches in bus shelters to make waiting more comfortable for people. I'm wondering whether I dare look at Councillor Alban when I say this and say that as Chair of the Climate Change Group at Ramsgate Town Council, it's something we'd be interested in maybe suggesting a very modest amount of our budget might go into with his approval. So I do think there's possibilities here to make our bus shelters more comfortable, more accessible, and particularly more appropriate for older members of our population. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. Yeah, I mean, this is a good news story. Honestly, I don't envisage any bus shelters without adequate seating. That certainly wouldn't be something that I'd be advocating. So I think the town council, parish council question, yeah, I mean, if we weren't to buy them, but I think we're going to build shelters with adequate seating for everyone anyway. As far as green roofs go, I think everything's on the table, but I will hand over again to Penny.
Yeah, so at this stage, it's about securing the money and then going out to be able to put them in, and we will look at what we can, where we can. But I appreciate the offer of the support, so we'll definitely be in touch.
Well, I've learned something tonight anyway, because I didn't know Councillor Pugh was an expert on green roof bus shelters. So, man of many talents, clearly. Yeah, so I mean, I think one thing we should say is, I mean, it's great to find out that we can have some influence over something to do with the bus service, because we clearly get very little say in the provision of buses, and the concerns that we've raised about buses don't seem to be heard by Kent County Council or by the provider. Members, any discussion about bus shelters? Okay, we're covered then. Thank you. Is that agreed? Thank you. And we'll move on to item 7, which I suspect quite a few people are here for tonight, which is the asset management disposal of surplus property, which is Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Leader.
Do I need to leave?
Yeah.
Generating capital receipts from asset disposals is a crucial component of the Council's financial and budgetary planning. If TDC is unable to receipt £1.25 million from asset disposals each financial year, key operational, buildings and statutory service delivery functions will be impacted due to there being a lack of capital investment available. Cabinet has been asked to support a recommendation for disposal of 2 surplus assets, which would allow the capital receipt from the sales to contribute towards the approved capital programme as set out in the medium-term financial plan. These proceeds would then be directly reinvested into the remaining assets the Council retains to fund necessary repairs, maintenance and capital improvements. We've been asked specifically to 1. Approve the open market disposal of the Tivoli Road asset. On the Tivoli Road asset, it's currently in the call for sites process, which has not yet completed. Any disposal of this site will need to give consideration to an overage position. This is to ensure that if a residential use is achieved in the future, despite it not being our current recommendation, the Council will be entitled to a portion of the uplift value. Secondly, we've been asked to approve the disposal of Piermont Park Depot. Thirdly, we've been asked to support a recommendation to transfer the Broadstairs War Memorial adjacent to Piermont Park to Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Council at nil value. I'd like to thank the Overview and Scrutiny Panel for their consideration of this item on the 16th of September. The panel supported the open market disposal of the Tivoli Road asset and the transfer of the Broadstairs War Memorial to Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Council. On the matter of the disposal of the Piermont Park Depot, the panel was split and subsequently made a recommendation to Cabinet that it should not dispose of this asset by public auction. Also related to this matter, some members of the panel had concerns about the access road to the site. I have weighed the Overview and Scrutiny recommendations against the Council Officer recommendations and recommend the following to Cabinet. Approve the open market disposal of the Tivoli Road asset. 2. Do not approve the disposal of Piermont Park Depot by public auction and to exclude the access road from any disposal. 3. Support a recommendation to transfer the Broadstairs War Memorial adjacent to Piermont Park to Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Council at nil value.
Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. Can I just clarify that in terms of the disposal, you're proposing to exclude the access road as far as the gate, the initial gate at the end of the road, and the site therefore for disposal would be the site contained behind the gate and the depot site. Yeah. Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Alban, thank you. Speaking under 20.1, I have Councillor Joan Bright.
Thank you. Yes, I'm speaking on behalf of local residents in my ward who've contacted me with deep concerns about the future sale of the depot site. The residents wanted a reassurance that no part of the park will be sold off for development, especially for housing. So it's really encouraging to hear that you are no longer selling off the access road, which is part of the park. So, that's really, really good news. The depot is in a unique position on the edge of Piermont Park. Although it's a separate brownfield site, it can only be accessed via the park. This means that any future development has the potential to negatively impact public safety and wildlife. It's therefore essential that the depot site's future is very carefully considered with the best interests of the public in mind, not just the best price. There seems to be a general view that the depot site could and should be used for the benefit of the community, given its close proximity to the park. I agree with this view. I urge Cabinet to seek best value for the site by inviting proposals that prioritise community and environmental benefits with an aim to improve and enhance the amenity value and long-term future of the park, rather than causing harm by selling it for housing development. The site has the potential to be something really useful and truly valuable to residents and visitors in our town, but this can only happen if Cabinet agrees to dispose of the depot without the access road, which is what you're doing, which is great, but also with the view to prioritise offers from community groups and interested parties that will put social and environmental benefits first and who are sympathetic to the site's unique location on the edge of this very much loved park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bright, and I know you've been very active in lobbying Cabinet members around this issue, so thank you for your input. I didn't hear any questions, so I'm going to suggest that we move on to the next speaker, which is Councillor Garner.
Thank you. So I think it's fair to say that the number of emails that you and others have received about this is a good indication of the strength of feeling in Broadstairs against this proposal. And this proposal was, at the time, the disposal of part of the park as well as the depot. So I'm pleased and thank you for listening to those residents and to others and not now considering disposing of any part of the park. Because as you know, the park is designated in the local plan as open space under policy SB 32. As Councillor Bright mentioned, it is an excellent facility, or it could be an excellent facility for community use around the town. So I would like to echo what Councillor Bright has said, and all of these potential alternatives should be explored. I know the Town Council, along with a number of local community groups, would love the opportunity to use it for the good of the local and wider community. So I would ask you, well, you have shelved the plans to sell or dispose of that part of the park, and talk to the Town Council and in community groups about its community use. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garner. I mean, I will just say that the report does include the option not to include the access road, and that wasn't my specific request. So while we have listened carefully to what residents have said and to what scrutiny have said, from the beginning, Cabinet was intending that this will be included as an option in the report. It isn't the officer recommendation, but we do as Cabinet have the opportunity to ask for other options to be brought forward, and that's what we did. I appreciate that what was going to happen or what might happen tonight isn't clear to residents from that, but that's the process, and that's because we have to make the decision here. But the option was always in the report. Right, moving on to Councillor Bayford. Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. Councillor Pugh.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check with Councillor Duckworth in that what you're proposing for this agenda item in relation to Tivoli Road is to proceed with the asset disposal, but to put an overage on the land so that if it is then sold for development, the council gets more of a receipt back and shares in the profits. Is that correct?
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, great, brilliant. Thank you, Councillor Duckworth. I just wanted to check. I got a little bit muddled when I was listening. That's all. That's not a reflection on you. I may have been distracted doing something else, so apologies. I just wanted to check. Whilst I welcome the council's moves and efforts to dispose of assets that it no longer feels is a benefit to hold anymore and feels that they could be better in community or private hands, and I understand there are budget constraints and there is a need for us as a council year on year to fill a kind of a quota or meet a certain threshold in value for asset disposals. I'm concerned that the Tivoli Road site is being put forward at this time as for disposal, namely because, as you mentioned earlier, Councillor Duckworth, the site has been put forward or proposed as a potential brownfield site in the recent call for sites. We've had a local plan cabinet advisory group meeting since that consultation closed, where I don't want to betray confidences, but there was a discussion about the assessment that officers do and about whether sites are suitable or not, and potentially, if possible, that information, once that assessment is finished, could be publicly available so that residents can understand why certain sites may not be suitable or why they are, and stuff like that. Doesn't give it any presumption that things would be built. Sorry, Chair, I thought you were going to interject. The point I'm trying to make is that I feel that the Tivoli Road site is, I mean, I'm not an expert, but lends itself to be developed. It's a great town centre location, but I think that actually it's a certain site that really us as a council should be progressing and try to develop, particularly for affordable housing, for our own housing stock. As the Deputy Leader will attest to, I'm sure in the next agenda item, there are a lot of families on the temporary housing waiting list being housed outside of the district. You know, the Tivoli Road site is close to schools, it's close to services, it's close to the council offices for support. I think it would work very well. So I suppose what I'm asking Cabinet tonight is to consider to forego or delay agreeing to this disposal, or agreeing to it subject to the outcome of the assessment that's being carried out on this as a suitable site for call for sites. And then if it is deemed that it's not something that the council can do on its own, then it can proceed with the disposal. But I just think it's a real shame that we're not taking advantage of that ourselves to develop it for our own residents.
Before I bring Councillor Duckworth in, can I just deal with the planning point you made about there being a report back on the assessment of the sites that have been put forward? Absolutely, and the sites that were put forward through the appeal for residents to help us identify brownfield sites we might not have considered. We are progressing that, and we will bring forward a report with as much information as we can reasonably share about what we think about those sites. So that is the intention. I mean, I know, and Councillor Whitehead is itching to tell you that we would love to put affordable housing on that site. But the planning advice that we've got is that we would not get consent. Now that might change in the future, and I take the point of what you're saying, but we are not able to do that at the moment. Do you want to add anything, Councillor? I know I'm stealing your thunder, I apologise, but it's sort of a planning and housing point as much as a disposal.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, we would all love far more council housing, obviously, but I think in this instance, we don't really have a site that can provide that.
So just to be clear, the site is designated as employment land, and we do need to protect employment land in the district. So that's the reason why it's there. It's not that we wouldn't rather use it for housing. It is that it is designated for employment land. Okay, Councillor Towning.
Thank you. It's vital that the council raises 1.25 million a year in order to maintain and protect our assets. Do we have any assessment as to how much we would raise from the sale, presume that the sale goes through for Tivoli and Piermont, what that figure would be, and how much income or revenue have we so far received this year from the disposal of assets in order to contribute towards the 1.25 million? And should we fall short of that figure, I mean, what contingency plan do we have to fulfill or to fill the black hole that may appear? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Towning. I'll pass that back to Councillor Duckworth.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, the contingency plan, and I will refer it to under a plant in a moment for the exact figures so far this year, but the contingency plan is to borrow, which would need to then be paid back. But as to what we've got so far this year,
I can confirm that we haven't delivered any disposal so far. So this is specifically why these two assets have been chosen, because they have the capacity to deliver the capital receipt that we need within this financial year, because to date we haven't delivered any disposal, so we haven't got £0 out of 1.25 million so far.
Yeah. Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. Piermont Park Depot is it's a conundrum because and there's something I want to clarify because I was on that ONS committee that discussed this panel, sorry. And one of the issues that were raised at the time was this whole scenario revolves around what's described as an access road, but its actual definition, because that's been a vehicle access to this working area for many years. And therefore, whilst it's claimed it's part of the open space of the park, can it be deemed to be an open space asset when it's vehicular access? Also, it was made very clear to the panel, and this is where I think we need to clarify what the recommendation was, that it needed to be included in the disposal because failure to do so would mean that we maintained as a council the liability and responsibility for maintenance of that road, which has already had, I believe it was a water leak at the cost of many thousands. If we don't vest the responsibility for the road, it seems to me very little point in disposing of the asset, because all we're doing is taking on the headache of maintaining a road that will be used by somebody else for future purposes unknown. What the recommendation was, however, was to do exactly as we seem to be doing and step back from putting this on the open market to a straight open auction, but rather to go for a form of tender that would allow the council to consider best value, including social options. For example, it may well have a value to Broadstairs Town Council that hasn't yet been discussed. My understanding, and obviously I'm not a Broadstairs councillor, but my understanding is that their maintenance teams have no base at the moment, so it potentially could come into use by then. I can't speak for them, but then they can't speak for themselves this evening very easily. But it would seem that there's bandwidth for a dialogue, A, with Broadstairs Town Council, B, with community groups. So what my suggestion would be to take a moratorium and temporarily consult on that, assess the access road and find out exactly how, because if you put this up for disposal without the access road, then we're buying an ongoing liability. What we have to do is consider the vast public concern here as well and act in the best interests of those people. And I think that's served by just taking a deep breath and considering their proposals as well as the town council's.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. I don't think there are any questions there. I don't know. I think we'll clarify. Sorry? Well, I'll refer that back to Councillor Duckworth and see if she wants to respond to that.
Yeah, as I said, in terms of the access road, it was a question of weighing one thing up against another, as in what the recommendation was and also the public interest in that and the things that were discussed around the issue. And we've decided that what we'd like to do is exclude the access road from any disposal. And not having an auction means to say that we've basically got more chance to look at social value and that sort of thing.
Thank you. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader. And not being a member of Broadstairs Town Council and therefore not in any way restricted, can I say thank you very much and how pleased I am to hear about the War Memorial, which is an excellent development. And can I then move on to say that as a Ramsgate councillor, I've had emails from residents with concerns about Piermont Park. So it's really encouraging to hear the steps forward that have been made in Cabinet. I said at scrutiny that I was very sorry for Ms Plant and her team because they are doing their best to raise money and we're constantly putting spokes in their wheel. But I do think this is a rather important spoke in the wheel. This is a community asset that is massively valued, as I think we can all tell from the amount of reaction we've had from members of the public. So it's really important that we deal with this sensitively. I suppose my question at scrutiny, is why we didn't start talking to Broadstairs Town Council before we even brought this to Cabinet? Why did we not have those conversations? And I suspect that the answer is going to be that's not how things are done. But I think part of the purpose of minority parties is to suggest that we do things in ways that are not how things are done. Anyway, I'd be interested to know that, and I do think that further conversations with Broadstairs Town Council should happen as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I mean, Councillor Duckworth, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, the overview scrutiny process and the ward councillors have created a consultation of a kind in any case, because I've had 20 emails on the subject, so, and I've replied to them. So, you know, it might not be a formal consultation, but actually we can move more quickly. At the moment, we can't have any consultations because there's a by-election on, and we don't want to have lots of consultations at the same time because the public get fed up with them. So it's just a question of balance.
Thank you. I mean, what I'd like to say about this is that I think, Councillor Austin, you referred to how massively valued the asset is. I would dispute that the depot is massively valued. I feel that people are concerned about the threat to the park and that they see a threat to the park in the disposal of the access road. And I understand that, and that's why I asked for the option to exclude the access road to be included in the report in the first place. And I've been there this morning and had another look at it, and I've noted obviously that there is there's an area of trees and planting the other side of the access road. And I can see in the report there's an ambiguity around what the area of disposal would be if the road was to be included. So I think we should be clear that we would never have proposed disposing of the planted area. That was not what was intended, and the report doesn't intend to show in absolute detail what was included. But for clarity, we're not including any part of the road, so there is no threat to the park. What is clear to me is that that is a road. When it branches off to the left, it's clearly not a road, it's a path, and it has been used historically by vehicles. So it's quite hard to argue that it's not a vehicle path and that it can't provide any access to that site. And I'm sure whatever use that site is eventually put to, and there may well have to be a planning application, that road will be used by vehicles to service that area. Even if it was some kind of open space for the community, there would still be vehicular access via that road. What is appropriate is for the planning system to determine. It's not for us to determine here tonight. What we've chosen to do as a cabinet, because we realise that public confidence is vested in that, in the council retaining that road, is to retain it. That's what I hope we're going to vote for. I don't know, Ms Plant, would you like to speak on any of the things that have been said about the discussions that you perhaps should have had with Broadstairs Town Council or others before going on the disposal list, and just set out a bit of background to that?
Thank you, Leader. I'll answer that question, actually. Well, just to confirm that at the very outset of this process, officers did meet with representatives of Broadstairs and St Peter's Town Council and talk through the proposals. So obviously you asked about that, so to confirm that we did do that.
Thank you, and I understand that no offer, there's been no decision by Broadstairs Town Council to make any offer for the site in public session anyway, and that this council is not aware of any formal offer from Broadstairs Town Council, so it's not a case of us not listening to that. Members, any comments on this? Councillor Alban.
Yeah, I think what's important for the residents of Broadstairs, I can categorically state to you, as a cabinet member responsible for open spaces, which includes all the parks, etc., throughout Thanet, no part of any park would ever be sold off all the time I'm sitting in this cabinet position. That's clear on that. I'm very clear on that. What I would just say about the access road, and as a cabinet member, I couldn't take part in the planning application, and I just want to make this part particularly clear. One of the reasons that the planning committee refused consent for the housing, and I'm not concerned about that, but the housing, but was the use of that access road, and that vehicles shouldn't go up and down there, and that was a major thing. It was a major point that they... But it's clear, just following what the leaders just said, whoever has that, even if it is Broadstairs Town Council, to use that site, vehicles will use that. And I find that very difficult to swallow, to be quite honest. Thank you, Chair.
Any other comments from members? Okay, so I think we've reached a clear position and people understand what the position is. And I hear what Councillor Davis says about the council retaining liability for the road, but I think that's what the public wants. So I'm certainly supporting that. Recommendations have been moved and seconded. Are they agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Thanks very much. And members of the public, you don't have to stay for the rest of the meeting if you don't want to, but you are, of course, very welcome. Okay, welcome back to Councillor Bright. You've missed all the excitement, but never mind.
Glued to my screen.
Moving on then to item 8, which is the second update on the development and acquisitions programme from Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Leader. Tonight, Cabinet is being asked to note the progress of the Housing Revenue Account Development Programme and the Temporary Accommodation Programme. When we began our Accelerated Housing Programme, we committed to regular updates on the overall programme alongside the updates that we make with each individual purchase. This report serves as our second update on the progress of both our Accelerated Development Programme and the Temporary Accommodation Acquisition Programme, both of which were agreed upon by Cabinet to tackle the significant need for council housing, the need to bring residents in historic out-of-area temporary accommodation placements back to Thanet, and the financial need to introduce a large in-house temporary accommodation portfolio to reduce losses and previous overspends relating to temporary accommodation and create a programme that produces a surplus for the council by the end of year 1. This report provides a comprehensive overview of the progress made towards increasing both affordable housing and temporary accommodation units within the district. It highlights the financial performance of both programmes, detailing capital costs, funding sources and revenue impacts, whilst also outlining future development and growth opportunities and potential risks related to those. We are, as always, exceptionally transparent around these programmes, and it needs to be recognised that external factors have to be addressed within our planning. We are also updating on our target of 400 genuinely affordable council homes by 2027. The substantial investment in temporary accommodation to address homelessness and the financial health of the Housing Revenue Account and General Fund in supporting these crucial initiatives. We promised to deliver 400 council homes by 2027. As of today, we have secured 326 of these homes, with 76 already tenanted and in use. We are also in the process of developing 2 further schemes for development. Both are complex brownfield sites or refurbishments and will be the subject of further reports to Cabinet. Highfield Road, Ramsgate, a site in TDC ownership with potential for 25 accessible units, and Eaton Place, Margate, which will provide approximately 65 units of accommodation. These 2 further schemes will increase the current HRA programme pipeline to a total of 415 homes, which takes us past our initial promise of 400 homes. This in itself is something that the Council and housing specifically should be incredibly proud of. And the support for this programme that has come from councillors from all parties is commendable and hugely appreciated. It has enabled us to not only do our best to provide for our residents, but also make the long-term strategic plans that are essential for the health and sustainability of our community and of our budget. In December 2024, Cabinet agreed that we would proceed with a programme to acquire or develop up to 170 homes for use as temporary accommodation, with the specific aim of bringing residents back to Thanet who are in historic out-of-area TA placements, and with creating an in-house temporary accommodation portfolio that would create surplus for the council, rather than continuing with significant losses relating to using external providers. We have discussed many times the issues around temporary accommodation, stemming from the fact that TA has to come from the general fund, rather than the housing revenue account, which means that losses in this area have a significant impact on our ability to deliver other services. Full Council approved a combined general fund budget of 46.8 million across 4 financial years, 25-26 to 28-29, to support this programme. We have spent 20.2 million thus far and already have a pipeline of 77 homes, which is nearly 50% of our commitment already met, almost 4 years away from the final deadline. 25 of the 170 homes are already completed and in management, with a further 9 currently with legal. 21 are already occupied, enabling Thanet residents to not only come home, but also saving significant amounts for the council on external accommodation, whilst giving us the ability to guarantee a high standard of temporary accommodation for those who need it. The social and strategic importance of both of these programmes cannot be understated. We have a huge lack of genuinely affordable housing within Thanet, and an exceptionally unstable external market for residents renting within the private sector, as rent increases and evictions unfortunately increase alongside the popularity of Thanet. This means that providing secure council housing is essential for our residents. Housing is health. There is no plainer way to say this. The physical and mental health of Thanet residents relies on the provision of secure, genuinely affordable housing, allowing individuals to thrive, families to put down roots, education and employment to be stable, and communities to grow. To be at this point in 2025, with 415 of the 400 properties promised already within the pipeline, and with 77 of the 170 temporary accommodation properties secured, is a huge step forward for the health of our residents, Thanet as a whole, and for the financial future of this council and Thanet. A huge amount of work has gone into these programmes, through both housing and finance, and the stability that they have provided for residents in doing so cannot be overstated. You have helped create a secure future for hundreds of households, and that is a legacy that will live on far beyond this Labour administration and far beyond this council. For a small district council to have achieved this is extraordinary, and I ask all present to acknowledge the work and determination of officers in ensuring that we are providing for those who need it, and in working alongside this Cabinet to bring forward strategies that ensure that we are providing homes, not just houses. I move the recommendation set out in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Keane, thank you. And this time, Councillor Bayford will want to speak over 20.1.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. I'd like also to thank Ashley Jackson for the detailed report, including tables that allow members to view the progress of the development and acquisition programme to date. I have a couple of questions. In 2.7 of the report, we see that the rapid increase in people presenting as homeless and in need of TA has played a substantial part in the increasing pressures on local authorities, and that this is a 12% increase from the same period last year. Do we know the increased percentage specifically in Thanet? And my second question is, looking at phase 4, units under construction in Tomlin Drive, Clements Road, Dane Valley Road and Stanner Court were approved by Cabinet in November 2021. Do we have any idea when these are likely to be completed and occupied, please? Thank you.
Firstly, thank you for speaking, Councillor Bayford, because I was very worried when nobody was going to speak, because Yeah, it's important. In terms of increases in homelessness, we've had, as far as I'm aware, an above average increase. So there are potentially many reasons for this, but as I mentioned, I think the popularity that Thanet is now experiencing creates shortages within the rental sector and also pushes up rental prices. So we've been working very, very hard on homelessness prevention, which means that homelessness cases are hopefully headed off at the pass in that case. But I can hand over to Ashley for current figures.
Thank you, Councillor Bayford, for your support. I'm just looking at, I recently did a housing options update. I'm not sure I have the specific, can't quite, is it in there? Have you found it?
You may recall that there was a report to Cabinet last month on housing options, service demands, homelessness numbers, and so on. And in that report, there's some information about homelessness approaches, so people approaching the council and asking for help with a potentially homelessness situation. So in 24-25, so that's the year to the 31st of March 2025, we had 1,804 approaches. In the same period, 23-24, we had 1,241. That represents a 45% increase.
45%. Thank you.
I was going to go with around 50. I wasn't brave enough. In terms of the current phase 4 developments, they're all at different points, but I know that we'll be visiting some of them together, and we'll also be visiting with ward councillors as soon as they're completed. We've got some fairly significant progress on those, so
they're being handed over between November and January. So it's imminent.
Excellent.
Yeah.
That's good news. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, members, any other comments? Councillor Keane.
Thank you, Leader. I mean, obviously, the work that's been done on this is fantastic, but I also wanted to highlight the increase in the numbers presenting as homeless, because that's obviously going to increase our numbers then and maybe undermine to the public the work that has been done and achieved in reducing those numbers. So well done to everyone for the work done, but we're in very difficult times.
Indeed. And I'd just like to say that I think the report is extremely useful, and I think it's great in terms of the transparency of the programme, so that everyone can see what's going on inside and outside the council. We get a lot of public noise about borrowing from people who don't necessarily understand the background to it, and the fact that most of the council's borrowing is related to our housing programme, and obviously there is revenue attached to it, which is the most important thing about borrowing. That it is, we do have a plan to repay it, but in the process we are making a difference to people's lives, and I think we can all be very proud of that as a council, and I know the officers are as well, and I think it's a great achievement. Members, that's been moved and seconded. We note the report. Is that agreed? Thank you. And we move on to the Walpole Coast Protection Coping Replacement with Councillor Alban.
How exciting this is going to be. Right, this report seeks approval to proceed with the procurement and contract award of the Walpole Coast Protection Project, which is 100% grant funded by the Environment Agency, to the value of £1.169 million. The project includes a 30% contingency as required by the Environment Agency. The project aims to replace a section of seawall between Hodges Gap and Newgate Gap in the Cliftonville East Ward. The existing precast concrete coping blocks are failing, posing a risk to coastal erosion that could impact residential development and public amenities like the Queen's Promenade if work is not undertaken. If the seawall were to fail in the future, the cliff could erode by 4 metres over a relatively short period of time, leading to the evacuation of Queen's Court and the closure of Queen's Promenade. The proposed solution involves breaking out promenade slabs, removing and reusing coping blocks, excavating for a new mass concrete beam, preparing surfaces, drilling and fixing steel reinforcement bars, and reconstructing berm slabs. Now, I have to say at this point, I hadn't a clue what a berm slab was. I've never even heard of the word, but evidently it's basically the promenade, the top of the promenade. Yes. The construction phase is planned to start in March 2026, pause for the summer holidays in July and restart in September, completing before October to avoid wintering bird restrictions. Access to the lower promenade will be disrupted during construction. The expected outcome is a stabilised seawall that maintains the hold the line shoreline management plan policy. Not providing the project would lead to the withdrawal of the grants and an increased erosion risk. Legal and procurement advice will be sought for the contract award. The project aligns with corporate priorities and addresses climate change by aiming for the lowest possible carbon footprint. It is recommended that Cabinet approves A, the key decision to award the contract with a value in excess of £250,000 and up to the value of the Environment Agency grant of £1.169 million to the successful bidder following a procurement exercise for capital works to replace a dilapidated section of seawall between Hodges Gap and Newgate Gap. And secondly, that the Director of Environment, having sought advice from legal services, agrees to the final terms of any contract award and signs the contract with the successful bidder. So moved, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Alban. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Keane. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Towning.
Thank you. I'm delighted that we've actually got this contract now and the funding. It's a great move. But may I ask, the contract to be awarded for 1.169 million, is that going to be a fixed contract price? Because we've got to take into account when this grant was available to TDC, it was prior to the increase in national insurance, inflation still continuing, and it would affect labour costs, it would affect material costs, and should it not be a fixed contract and the cost to repair runs over the 1.69, what are we going to do about that? What is the contractor going to be funded by? And so you've got to avoid any possible black hole yet again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Towning. The 1.65 million is the bottom line, effectively. They will be looking for the contract under that amount, right? So to say, obviously, we don't want to go over that, but I will ask. Did you say Councillor then? Mr. Marmo has not reached those heady heights yet.
Hi, yeah. So we did a study and a cost plan was produced, and that wasn't too long ago. So in terms of the project, we've then applied to the Environment Agency, and as said within the report, there's a 30%, which is a healthy contingency of 30%. Normally, by the time we get to this stage of tendering, it'd normally be around about 10% contingency. So we've got a really healthy contingency of 30% in there. We don't anticipate the contract to be more than £1 million. The 169,000 is the additionality that the Environment Agency has asked for. So we've got a healthy contingency in there. In terms of fixed price, whatever's tendered for is the price. But clearly in any construction project there'll be unknowns that come as the project goes on, and that's where the 30% contingency would come into play. If the tenders come in above what we anticipate, then we would go back to the Environment Agency and confirm the costs, and then ask for a new grant on the basis of the tender prices.
Thank you. Members, any discussion? That's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And we move on to item 10, which is the AI policy, which I will be introducing. So this report considers a new artificial intelligence policy for the Council. The core purpose of the policy is to establish clear governance, responsibilities, risk management and operational processes for AI use across the Council. It aims to balance the significant opportunities AI offers with the robust measures to mitigate known and unknown risks, ensuring safe and responsible implementation. This policy is a vital part of our wider transformation programme, demonstrating our commitment to embracing technology to ultimately improve the way we deliver services to our resident. As it's a rapidly evolving technology, AI has the potential to add significant value to the way we work. It brings opportunities for more efficient, cost-effective, joined-up and evidence-based decision-making and operations. We see it as a tool to support our wider transformation vision, which is shared with members in this report. However, it must be managed in an effective and responsible way. Following a 30-day consultation with staff, councillors and our recognised trade unions, the policy has been refined, reflecting the feedback we received. Today we're asked to approve the approved AI policy ahead of the implementation and rollout across the organisation. And I move the recommendation. Councillor Bright is keen to second it. Yeah. Are you going to speak, Councillor Bright? Please do.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for officers. So I apologise in advance for how enthusiastic I'm about to get on this policy. I was really grateful to attend and chair the recent meeting of the General Purposes Committee. Thoroughly enjoyed listening to the incredibly knowledgeable report prepared by Hannah Thorpe and Jess Seward. It's clear that a lot of thought and work and cooperation between departments has gone into producing this policy. AI is a game changer. It's a technology that gets exponentially more powerful on an almost weekly basis at the moment. So it's vital that this council embraces it and that officers will be honing their skills in this area. It's great for their own saleability and their own careers as well, I think is important to note. Obviously, with the excitement comes risk. We need to proceed with some degree of caution, and training must be comprehensive. The risks are well outlined in section 7.4 of the report, but I want to give a little example of something I encountered in my day job earlier this week. On Tuesday, an AI agent I built underwent what's known as model drift, which essentially means it thought it was cleverer than it actually was, and I had to give it a good telling off, switch it off and turn it on again. And that, for me, underpins the role that officers will continue to play in their everyday work. This is not doing people's work for them, it is a tool, and officers will need to be incredibly diligent in making sure they're across it. But that aside, and the risks aside, the way we use AI is going to radically change the way our officers work. And as Councillor Everett mentioned, the kind of sharing and cross-party sharing of knowledge, there's a lot of knowledge in this building. And given that we're setting up a walled garden, and that knowledge of whatever open AI asset we have will stay in this building, that knowledge will allow really, really quick facilitation of sharing of information, rather than having to run up two or three floors of steps, ask someone to send them an email 3 days later. A question can just be asked and they could just get an answer, and that will really save time. And really importantly, the everyday work of our staff, particularly those in administrative roles, will be spent on carrying out high value tasks rather than basic administration. And if we've got our brilliant people doing brilliant work rather than filling in reports or boring stuff, then they are going to be incredibly productive. This is very exciting stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Bright. We always welcome your enthusiasm. Which is not confined.
Someone has to be.
Just not confined to this item. Members, any other comments? Okay, I think this is exciting stuff. It's also slightly scary, I think, and we all recognise that. That's why it's important that we have a policy, and this seems to be a sensible policy, and it's been recommended by the General Purposes Committee as well. So there's been a thoroughgoing discussion of it. That's been moved and seconded. Members, is that agreed? And we move on to the last item of the evening, which is the delayed corporate performance approach and indicators, which was due to come last month, but it's arrived now. Obviously, it's important that we're transparent about how we're performing in key council services, which helps to demonstrate to our residents that the things they care about are being prioritised, and performance management is a key part of the corporate governance process. It adds value by providing a mechanism for accountability and an opportunity for continuous improvement. So this report proposes a new performance management framework which sets out how the council intends to manage and report on organisational performance. 40 corporate performance indicators are proposed. They don't cover every aspect of the council services, but they do provide an overview of progress against the 5 priorities within our corporate plan. Other data is also collected and monitored at service level. Quarterly corporate performance reports are proposed to provide a regular opportunity for review and challenge, while also ensuring that positive progress is acknowledged. An annual performance summary report is suggested to demonstrate how the Council has progressed with its priorities over the previous year. It will also include perception data as captured within the annual resident survey, reporting on levels of satisfaction with key Council services. To provide a robust picture of how the Council is performing, it's recommended to report against a consistent set of indicators, and this will better inform how Council is performing over time. If, however, new data becomes available which could improve the level of transparency with delivery of the corporate plan, these will be proposed to Cabinet for potential inclusion in future corporate performance reports. Additionally, following the conclusion of the Government's consultation on the new local government outcomes framework, a definitive list of key outcomes and metrics is expected to be published, requiring local councils to report progress on those areas. The list of performance indicators set out tonight will therefore need to be reviewed to ensure that they align with the metrics required from the Government. I move that Cabinet approves the recommendations in the report. Have a second, please. Thank you. Speaking under 20.1, Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Leader. Just wanted to say how pleased we are in our corner of the chamber to see this happening. It shows that we're moving forward with the recommendations that we had around project management and all of that, but also it's crucial in terms of the way that we communicate with our residents. All the sort of tagging, the labelling, the colours, all of that make things so much clearer, and I'm delighted to see that the way that our social housing team communicate their information is going to be the model that's followed, because we've seen how well that works with residents, how well they appreciate it, and how it helps people to understand some of the more complicated issues that we're trying to get across. And if we are able to use that approach more generally, I think it will help us to communicate much better with residents to understand much better what we're about, and to make it very clear what our priorities are across the piece. So very, very pleased to see this happening, and thank you very much to everybody who's involved.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. I'm going to ask Ms Thorpe if she wants to speak to this at all, because she's done all the work on this and her team. So is there anything that you'd like to say about it?
I mean, not a great deal of detail, other than I think this is something that we have kind of anticipated for a while. Is that on? Yeah, I'm on. Thanks. And that one of the pieces of work that we're doing in the background is around the presentation of it. So not just what gets presented in the report, but we've got aspirations that we want this to be far more accessible and easy to understand and easy to view on our website as well. So that's one of the things that the transformation team have been working on in the background. The idea being that whilst it's great to have the opportunity to bring these things forward at regular committee meetings, that data should just be transparent and open and available at all times. So that is the kind of the model that we're working towards. And yeah, we're really excited as well. So thank you.
And I did hear a rumour earlier that our recycling rate is increasing, so we're looking forward to reporting on that. I know. Members, any comments? Councillor Bright.
This came up, I think, we first started talking about this when I first joined this council, when we were on overview and scrutiny, when I was on overview and scrutiny, we were talking about how, we need better clarity, and I really like the fact that we're not just showing councillors better clarity on how well we're performing, but we're taking that out to the public, because actually we've got so much good news to tell you, and I think it's in some people's political interests, no one in this chamber at the moment, to make out that the world is going to ruin and that this country is going to ruin at the moment. And actually what we've got here is really hard evidence to show that actually it's not, and that we do live in a lovely district, and that our council is working really well to deliver for residents. So I think this is to be really valued, this initiative, and I thank the comms team for the work they're doing.
Thank you. Is that it, members? Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. That concludes tonight's meeting at 8:14. Thank you very much for your attendance and participation. Enjoy the rest of your evening.